Hi, I'm Tim, and welcome to the 1916 Company. Today we have a familiar face. You saw her first during an unprecedented his and hers collector conversation with her husband Tim. Today, Kate Mancuso cuts a solo album. Kate, welcome.
Thanks, Tim. Excited to be here.
So let's start from the beginning. I mean, some people are watch enthusiasts before they realize that's even a thing. Some people come to watches later in life. Tell me, how did you catch the bug?
So I caught the bug from my husband. We have lots of good watch collecting stories together, and we have a good history. I think he got into watches first because...
Right about when did that happen?
Around 2019. He had a good, solid watch that he would wear all the time for several years. He had a Yachtmaster two-tone Rolex, and that was his one and only watch for quite a long time. And then he started to get more and more interested in going deeper into this hobby. He started exploring more on YouTube and down the rabbit hole of watch blogs and articles and things like that. Watched a lot of videos with you. So I saw this happening, and he started to get more interested. And I thought to myself, we're at this crossroads where he might go into this hobby and sort of do it on his own, and I won't be part of it. Or I could jump in and do my own research and really tag along and try to develop my own style and my own taste. And so that's what I did. And he's great. He includes me in a lot of his own watch friend groups and WhatsApp groups and things like that. And now they're not just his, they're both of ours. So I started collecting watches probably 2020, maybe about a year behind him. I had a couple of watches before that, but I wouldn't really consider myself a collector until I started being part of the community.
So now, speaking of catching the bug, that was the COVID period. Did you find that when you're sequestered in the house, you had like too much time to go on watch social media and YouTube and Instagram and sort of absorb it all?
It was a tricky time because there was so much content, and it was pretty overwhelming at first because I was starting behind him. He knew a lot more than I did when I first started. So for people that are first getting into the watch industry, I think that the key is words. First, you gotta learn the words. You gotta know what the bezels is, what indices are, lugs, case, dial, hands, straps, bracelets. Because once you know what you're talking about, it's so much easier to ask questions and then understand what people are saying back to you. So if you're starting off and you're not sure where to begin, just start with the basics and ask questions, find somebody who's into it. And generally, people that are in this hobby want more people to join. So if you show an interest, they're going to be pretty welcoming and pretty open to showing you their collection, talking through some of your interests, and they will help you explore and find your footing until then you are established and you know your own style.
So now that's kind of a cool pathway to collecting, because I think we've all had that experience, and a lot of folks watching this will be getting into the hobby and wondering how you start. We'll talk about some of those resources and communities you use. Let's start moving through your collection sequentially. So start me with the oldest watch on the table and just tell me a story about how that came to be and what about it you love.
Sure. This one's the oldest watch in many ways. So this is not only the oldest watch that I still have that I've owned, but it is definitely the oldest watch in terms of when it was made. So we believe this is from the 1960s. It's a Raymond Weil. It's a vintage men's black dial, diamond indices, and it's a quartz. I am actually the fourth Mancuso to own this watch. This belonged to my husband Tim's uncle, Tommy, who passed away and left it to my husband's other uncle, Pat, who then, when we got married, gave this to Tim. And Tim wore this for a little while, but it's pretty small for a man. It's not really his style. And when I lost my watch, the only watch I had at the time, he asked if I wanted to wear this one and sort of carry on the tradition. So I really love this watch. It's got all the family history. Even though it's a men's watch, it's one of my more feminine watches, I'd say. Styles really have changed, although I do think that sizes are getting smaller again.
Now, you mentioned to me earlier that you thought 36, 37 was actually a little bit small for your tastes. Mm-hmm. So let me just ask you generally, it seems like women who are watch collectors specifically sort of started in the community with vintage men's pieces. And I think there was sort of a revolt against watches that were really small or quartz or diamond studded or jewelry oriented. And initially there was that focus on smaller mechanical watches. Do you find that now women are looking at even slightly larger watches, not necessarily petite anymore?
I think that's right. And I think that's because a lot of women who are getting into the watch collecting habit are appreciating the same thing that men's are. They appreciate a good movement. It's hard to put a good movement into a very small case. They appreciate the ability to share watches across the table at a watch meetup, for example. So if I were to be wearing a Lady Datejust, that's not something somebody wants to trade with me if we go to one of these watch events.
It's not a conversation starter.
Exactly. Everybody's seen a lot of them. It doesn't really cross over. And really, there's no reason for ladies' watches to be small. Wrists are not all that different. I mean, I have a small-ish wrist.
Your wrist's probably pretty close to mine
It's not, it's not that small. And certainly there's a lot of men that have wrists my size. So it's perfectly reasonable for anybody to be wearing a 40mm watch. It depends on how the lugs are shaped. If you have shorter lugs, that's usually better for a smaller wrist. If you have straps or bracelets that flex around the lugs, like this one comes right around, this is great for a small wrist because it can wrap around something that is just even smaller than the lugs.
And the pivot points of the lugs are actually inboard of the ends of the lugs, so it's very narrow. And as long as you can pull the bracelet or the strap straight down, it's actually quite narrow across and almost anyone can wear it, even though it's not a small case.
That's exactly right. And that's something to look for. When you have a small wrist, you kind of figure out what to look for when you're looking at watches. And things with integrated straps or integrated bracelets can be a little bit trickier, especially if the lugs are flat and they come out horizontally from the case of the watch.
Like a Royal Oak would be the classic example.
Yes, I can't really wear a full-size Royal Oak. I can't really wear a Vacheron Overseas. The full-size 42mm Aquanauts don't fit me, sadly.
They don't fit me. That's okay. We're in that boat.
But as long as brands are giving some thought to how to design for a wrist that's medium size, they can really cross over the ladies-men's divide, and I don't think that there should be one. Cool watches are cool watches. People should be able to wear whatever they like. And if men want to wear smaller watches, men can wear smaller watches.
And it goes both ways. Women can wear bigger watches.
Exactly. And same thing with diamonds. I have a couple of diamonds in my collection. I know that's a classic kind of ladies look, but men have lots of diamonds on their Rolexes. You walk around and see a lot of jewels on a lot of men's watches, and there's nothing wrong with that. But not all ladies want to have that kind of bling either.
So it's interesting to me that your taste in watches developed so quickly and independently. And I'm kind of curious where you went from what could be considered sort of a family heirloom to picking watches that reflected your specific taste. So from Raymond Weil, where do we go next?
So next, we had a couple of other watches in between. This was a pretty recent one.
Anniversary Aqua Terra.
Yes, this is Omega Seamaster. It's got the 75th anniversary edition case back. It's really exciting. I picked this up. I actually didn't even want this watch that I knew of. It's one of the reasons why it's helpful to work with a dealer or a sales rep or a company that you know and trust and build that relationship, because this was a watch I didn't have on my radar. I wasn't thinking about it, but I had told our friend Natalie, hi Natalie, who works at 1916 on Walnut Street, I was looking for some kind of a sports watch. And so she knew that I had my eye on some rubber straps. I was looking at a Breitling Super Ocean. I tried on a couple of Tudors, but nothing was really speaking to me. And she called me and said, hey, I have a watch I think that you should look at. I think this is perfect for you. I know you're looking for something new. Come on down to the store and I'll show you. So she showed me this, and it's perfect. It's a perfect fun sports watch. It's a full-size case. It's a powder blue, beautiful summer strap. It's ice, I think it's summer blue is the color.
Ah, yes. The famous summer blue mid-season release.
Yeah, so this is perfect for the summertime. It's also perfect for the winter time because it kind of looks like ice when it's cold out. But for as soft and kind of feminine as it looks at the beginning, you look closely at the hands and the indices, it's pretty aggressive. There's a lot of angles there. There's the barbed hands.
It's not a small watch.
No, it's not. So it's really a perfect crossover for me for when I want to wear something fun, but also something that has a lot of interest from a watch collector's perspective.
Without a doubt, and I think it's fascinating because you do have this integrated strap. You've got everything matching, the dial, the lume inserts, the strap itself, and then this wonderful,
yeah, that's awesome,
mythological aquatic themed case back, a really neat piece. I think that's, I don't want to say a theme in your collection, but you do like color.
Yes, I do. Now that you say it, there is a lot of color on the table.
So from summer blue, what comes next? What is the next color?
Next color, let's go with this one. This is another bright color.
It's a couple.
Both on the dial and the strap. So this is the Mega Cool, and I think I actually had this one before the Omega. This was my first Moser that was mine, and it came on a teal strap that matched the dial. And I wore it on that teal strap for a while. Summertime came around, and we were changing some of the straps and the bracelets on our watches, and we started playing with these color contrasts. And the orange just looked spectacular with this green, and I never would have picked it out, never would have thought it, but we got a chance to line up all the colors and try, and it became a totally new watch. This is good.
So you and Tim were just checking out straps, like you had a whole spread on the table, and a la carte, you tried this and you found lightning in a bottle.
That's it. So we had a lucky sort of collection of DeLug straps. That's the one that we put on there, and it's got a really nice clasp. It has that nice snap to it. It's really secure. And it's cut to size, so you really don't have to worry about getting short, medium, or large. You can cut it down to the exact right fit, the exact right size, if you want it a little looser, a little tighter. But the color selection is what sold us, because you can't put that on a black strap. I guess you could, but we didn't want to.
No, that would be kind of like caging the beast. I think when you got the Mega Cool dial, you got to bring it out.
Yes, exactly.
And it's a big watch. I mean, this is not the 40mm Pioneer Center Second from Moser. This is the full 42.8.
Yes, that's right. And so when I had it on the original strap, I actually had to change it from the standard size to the short strap, which worked out great, because that's another thing that people should know if they have a smaller wrist. A lot of these watches in the store are going to come on the standard size strap, and sometimes even the smallest hole for that won't work. It'll be too loose. You should always know that a watch is going to be able to be swapped out for a smaller strap. Smaller straps are standard, they just don't always come on in the store. But if you ask, that's a way to make sure that a watch that's bigger like this can still fit you properly.
And that's a really important point, I think. A lot of people will look at the stock strap and think, well, this watch doesn't fit me, but it's not the watch, it's the strap.
It is, and it still does bother me a little bit that brands don't think about a customer's first experience trying their watch. Because sometimes if you try it on for the first time, even me, I know that I could ask for a smaller strap. But if I put it on the first time and it doesn't fit, I just don't fall in love.
It's a bad first impression.
Exactly.
And that's really important, because a veteran watch salesman once told me, Tim, no matter what in this business, do not lose a sale over a strap. You can always replace a strap.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, this DeLug strap's really nice. It's got a really cool leaf spring double deployant right there.
Yep.
And this is your watch. I mean, you got to make some sort of commitment where you're cutting a strap to length.
Yes.
So Tim's not going to be wearing this anytime
No,
soon.
you can always cut it smaller, but you can't put it back once you do. We have another one. I guess the color on this is on the dial, and we decided to go a little bit more muted on the strap.
But before we talk about the muted strap, you got to tell me about the watch.
Okay.
Because this is a special one.
All right, so this is Christopher Ward. It's a Bell Canto. This was designed by a man named Jazz that you and I are both intimately familiar with from our WhatsApp group. It chimes on the hour and on demand. So this is an hour striker. So it's not a minute repeater, but every hour on the hour, if you have the time turned on, it will ding. And it's actually a very audible, beautiful tone. It makes me smile every time I hear it. I never expect it. It always sort of interrupts me for a minute and makes me smile. It's a really beautiful orange dial underneath. I guess it's a base plate maybe, but it's colored to match Jazz's McLaren. He's in a horology WhatsApp group that you're also part of.
Let's talk about the horology WhatsApp group, because I mean, I think it's important to talk about community, and that's a big one for you.
I agree. So there's a lot of horology and WhatsApp subculture going on in the collector world. And it's all in good fun. People are pretty welcoming, but even if you aren't able to engage with people on an in-person basis, the WhatsApp groups and the online groups, I'm sure people use Facebook groups and things like that too. There are ways to connect across time, across distance, and make sure that you're getting to talk to people every day. So a lot of the people in this horology group that you and I are part of have the same watches. They have a Bell Canto like this, they have a 12 like this, because they were designed by the man who founded the group, Jazz, and designed and redesigned and refined and perfected over many iterations.
So many concept art, like thumbnail-sized proposals before they settled on this.
Oh yes, apparently the brushing had to be done and redone, but ultimately what comes out is these beautiful pieces, and then you're sharing a watch that's just for this small group of people who know each other and chat to each other all day long.
So ask other people you know in the hobby, when you're at watch shows, when you're at Red Bar, when you're meeting with a friend, are you a member of any communities, whether WhatsApp or Facebook or forums? And that's really your pickup point. That's when you're gonna find these, because otherwise you'd never know they exist.
That's exactly right. And ask lots of questions, because people that are in this collecting hobby want more people to be in the hobby. The more the merrier. People want to see other people's watches, and then if you connect, like you said, you can ask and say, are you involved with any of these online communities? Once you're involved in an online community, then you can take it offline in person. And we do that a lot. We'll tell people in the WhatsApp group, hey, we're all gonna meet up at watch time in October, and people are gonna go, and then we are all of a sudden real friends in person, not just online friends.
Yeah, now you're not just a handle on a WhatsApp group.
Exactly.
So now this is a really cool piece, the Phoenix, vibrant sort of, I would say orange more than anything else dial.
I would say orange, yeah.
You got a blinding, bright polished Phoenix on the back. And now you were telling me that there's sort of an irony to having a dial this vibrant and a strap this muted.
Yeah, we tried for an orange strap, but it was too much. And so I was looking, I thought maybe white for a little while, and then we went back and forth and we're trying on blues, light blues, dark blues, but something about the gray, when I put it on my wrist, felt right. So sometimes something will look good on the table, and then you put it on and there's something about your skin tone that it doesn't really work. So for me, with such a bright dial, the darker gray strap really makes the watch pop. And this is a watch and a dial that you want to focus on the movement. You don't really want to take away from that. And this really lets the dial shine.
That's a great way to look at it. And I think you're absolutely right. Turn this into almost like a little vitrine for the dial and de-emphasize everything else. Very neat piece, very neat philosophy too. So you may as well tell me a bit about the Vulcan now, because we're in Christopher Ward land. We're talking about, well, you tell me the genesis of this
Sure.
one.
So we're big Christopher Ward fans. I'm a big Christopher Ward fan. I think that you get great value with Christopher Ward. I agree with that. It's not the most sophisticated movement. The case back, the closed case back on the Phoenix, I don't miss seeing the movement on the inside. I think it's great that they've got a logo. But this 12 was a really great addition to my collection, because it kind of filled a space where I didn't have this kind of sporty, more aggressive feeling integrated bracelet kind of a watch. And here it feels really comfortable. The bracelet is tapered around your wrist really nicely.
It doesn't have that fight and flare.
No, exactly. It doesn't ever pinch. It fits a little bit where you can move it around, but it doesn't feel like it's going to flip over on the other side of your wrist. The dial on this is incredible. I mean, it looks great under this lighting, but in the sunlight, it's even more vibrant and amazing. And every time you tilt it, it looks a little different.
Yeah, very fiery. It lives up to its name,
yes,
Vulcan.
It is the Vulcan, and it looks like a volcano on the inside. I like the details, the minute markers and the 12, 1, 2, 3 hour markers. They really contrast nicely on the black fume on the outside.
And it is kind of interesting that you've got the multiple points of the faceted bezel breaking up the gulf between each one of the indices. So you've got a point of interest almost every few degrees.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of those watches that the more you look at it, the more you see the details. And they make a lot of standard 12s with standard dial colors. So these are available for people to purchase online. You don't have to be part of a special WhatsApp group to get some of these watches.
This was for the group?
This was for the group, yes. This was a companion piece with the Phoenix, the same designer jazz, the same rigorous, iterative process to get the dial just right. But he did a great job designing this. Even the date window is sort of recessed right where it belongs. It doesn't distract from the dial.
And you don't lose an index.
No, you don't lose an index because it's floating up above. So I love this watch. I wear this a lot more than I thought I would because it feels so comfortable, and even though the dial's very bright color, it kind of goes with a lot of different things.
It does, and I can see the theme again though in your collection where you've got a larger watch worn a little bit loose.
Yeah, that's right. I don't like to have a watch where it's gonna leave a mark on my skin when I when I take it off at the end of the day. I'm a big fan of micro adjustments for that. Every once in a while it'll feel a little bit tight and I'll just open it up to give me a little more room. Because yeah, I definitely do like to let it move around a little bit more.
Yeah, and I agree with you. When the hand starts changing color, you gotta back off.
Yes, exactly.
So now, continuing through the collection, I know we've got very high horology and very entry level. So let's sort of continue the tour, talk maybe about some watches that have a lot of sentimental value. I think you have very grand and also very maybe humble watches that are equally important to you from a reminisce perspective.
That's absolutely right. So I think the humble watch that I have on here that I still love is this beautiful powder blue Casio. Everyone might remember this or recall this from when they were kids.
Yeah, the F-91.
Yes, it's F-91, and this was a gift. So we're very close friends with one of your fellow YouTubers, Andrew Morgan, and his wife, Charlotte. Hey! And so they came to stay with us last week when they were visiting the States, and they gave me this, and they gave Tim a matching black one. So we have matching Casios, and I wore this to train for a half marathon because, believe it or not, I didn't want to wear any of my other watches to train for a half marathon. And the stopwatch function was great to time my runs. So we've been through a lot. And it just reminds me every time that watches don't have to be really complicated. They don't have to be really expensive. Anybody can love a watch for any reason, whether it was a gift from a friend or a family member, whether you tie it to a really important memory in your life. So, watches are not just about, sometimes it feels like you're comparing your watches to everybody else's watches all the time.
It's almost like you're racing your collection against theirs.
Exactly, and you want to show people cool stuff and you want people to send you cool stuff. So there is a lot of that in the watch community, but at the end of the day, your watches should represent something special to you. And I wanted to bring this one because this is very special to me. It was a gift from a very good friend, and I used it to do something very, very hard to achieve in my life that I never thought I would. So I can't leave that at home if I'm going to talk about my collection.
No, it's great. It matches the summer blue of the Omega.
It does. It does. It's much lighter, though, much more functional for certain things.
I guess polar opposites. We go from Casio to Patek Philippe. I think one blue to another. Let's sort of just talk about where this sits in your universe.
Yes. So this is Patek Philippe 24. Frankly, we'll look at this under the microscope at our house because we have a microscope because we're total nerds. I was curious to put it next to Tim's 5811 because the movement and finishing on that is incredible. And I have to give it to Patek. They did not skimp one bit on this movement. It looks identical in quality and finishing to his. It really makes me happy to know that their standards are the same, even if it's something that's a ladies model, because sometimes you feel a little bit...
You see a smaller case and diamonds and you kind of brace for the worst.
Exactly. You think, oh gosh, is this quartz? And then you flip it over. And there's nothing wrong with a quartz watch if that's what you are looking for. But if you're looking for a beautiful movement, you hope that it's as good as you want it to be when you put it under a loupe or microscope. And this blew me away. I couldn't stop looking at it. It was so pretty. And then you turn it over to the front and it's also equally pretty. So this is where, I get to indulge a little bit in my sparkly side, I guess. So if I'm going out and we're doing a fancy event, if we're going to a wedding or we're doing a really nice dinner and I'm very dressed up, sometimes it's not the best look to wear something like this or like this or like this. You want to complement what the event that you're going to. So that's a really beautiful watch. It makes me happy when I put it on. I would say if you're a woman, you kind of get the best of all worlds because you could wear anything. You could wear anything in the whole watch world.
Do you see more women in the watch collecting hobby, or are you aware of other women who are collectors, either online or in person?
We find each other, yes. There's not as many, but we do tend to gravitate. And if you're at a watch event, it might be hard for a random man to find another random man and start up a conversation. But if there's only 3 or 4 women at a watch event, we always end up talking to each other because that's what you're there for. You're there to make connections, you're there to meet friends. And I've made some very good friends through the watch community, people that like the same brands that I do, people that have the same style or different, but it's a common interest. And it's harder, the older you get and the busier you get with work, it's harder to make new friends that aren't affiliated with your job. And so if you go to some of these different events, you'll at least know you've got something to talk about when you want to break the ice with someone.
That's a good way to look at it, and I have noticed the change. When I started in this business 10 years ago, very rare to find women who were very passionate about the hobby. They were out there, but often you'd never find 2 in one place. The other day we did an event with Google and Facebook, and they had their watch collector group from New York at our boutique in New York City, and all the women who were there were players. None of them were passengers, every single one very passionate, and that's a big change I've seen even just in the last decade.
Yeah, and I think it's for the better. I think it's not a hard hobby to get into if you're willing to put in some upfront research and attention, and you don't even have to own some of the watches you talk about. If you just like them and know them and talk about them and do some research, you can have a great conversation about a watch that's not in the room, and you can continue your evolution of knowledge without necessarily buying more watches. You can never buy all the watches. Oh. You can never have everything you want or would dream of, but you can know about them.
And I think that's really interesting that you discuss knowledge as being like the real impediment to getting into the hobby, the intimidation of not knowing rather than this is prohibitively expensive. The first thing you think is, I don't speak the lingo, I don't know the products, I don't know the hierarchy of brands or models. That can be overcome without any money. And then you can spend however much or as little as you want. You can have lots of fun with your Casio. You can have lots of fun with your Tourbillon, but it's that threshold of knowledge that gets you into the hobby. Just like people go to a car show. We can talk about Lamborghini without owning Lamborghinis.
100%, that's exactly right. And people ask me a lot, how do I get my girlfriend into watches? Or how do I get my wife into watches? And my first response is, are you sure you want to do that? Because you might have to double your budget.
The rabbit hole.
But if you're looking to get a woman you love into the watch industry or into the watch hobby, start with the basics. I would say, start with one watch and talk about some particular aspect of it and find out what she likes. Because women have lots of opinions about aesthetics, and that's a great place to start. If you can talk about what you like regarding the way a watch looks, that's halfway towards the end goal there. It's a perfectly reasonable opinion to say, I like blue dials. And you can go pretty far in the watch world with that.
You're not wrong. I've always said 90% of the reason we buy a watch is we like the way it looks. That's for every guy, that's for every gal. Like, it's a sensual hobby, but it's also a very aesthetic hobby. And I think it's fascinating that, the last 3 watches here we haven't really talked about are all very hardcore on the dial aesthetics. So let's open with a pretty big gun. As a watch worn by a woman, this Beaucroft Senate is pretty big. Like you said, there was a smaller case at 37. You thought that was too tiny.
Yeah, so this is from British Watchmakers Day, which they had in London in March. And so we went out there, we saw Andrew and Charlotte again, so we made a whole trip of it. And we had a great time before we even got to the Watchmakers Day. We saw the White Cliffs of Dover, we went out and had great dinner. So this was sort of the icing on the cake when I saw this watch at the show and I fell in love. And they had every model on display, every color, every size, and the 37mm model, I tried it on and it just felt like it was this tiny little sort of button on my wrist.
Like you're wearing a quarter on your wrist.
Exactly. And I like a bigger watch. It's a personal thing. I just like bigger watches. I always have gravitated toward full-size watches. And when I tried on the 37 and I tried on the 40, I definitely preferred the 40. But that's also because of the way that it's structured. It's because the lugs are shortened. They slope sharply down. So even though it's a bigger case, it starts to fit your wrist right away. And then the steel mesh bracelet is very flexible, very comfortable, wraps right around. So even though the case size here is 40, it wears a lot smaller than other 40 millimeters you might be trying. So don't let the millimeters dictate whether or not you try a watch. It's much more important to open yourself up to the shape of the lugs and the bracelets and the straps.
That's so important. I mean, just looking at this case, the lugs barely extend beyond the edge of the bezel. So if it's a 40 millimeter case, it must be maybe 43, 44 millimeters lug to lug. And then you do have that pull straight down kind of flexibility of the bracelet, where not only is this flexible as a strap, but unlike, say, a Royal Oak or a Nautilus, there isn't that fight in the flare where you can't pull it straight down out of the lugs. And the lug shape, like you said, really important. Does it work with your wrist or against? But I gotta say, the thing that kills me here is just how beautiful that matte media finished mid-case is.
The details on this watch are what make it. And this is not an expensive watch by the standards of some of these. This is probably about 350 pounds. So this is something a lot of people can get into. They do sell online. It's a UK brand. I've never seen one in the US actually. I'd love to know if anybody else has one. But it's a small brand founded by two friends a couple of years ago. And they assemble everything in the UK. It's a Miyota movement. And it's just a really fun, comfortable watch. And the fact that they are leaning into colors and details in a way that you won't always get with a lower priced watch like this. I mean, they're using white hours and minutes hands. The second hand is polished. There's 12 and 6 hour markers that have a different design shape than the stick indices all around.
Plus a little bit of rose gold richness.
They do have this. There's a lot of different colors that are contrasting with the dial, which is this sort of green-black fume. So there's a lot of design, there's a lot of details, and honestly, British watchmakers are really impressive. I didn't really know what to expect going to this show. There are a lot of small brands that are doing some really creative, really exciting things. So I think we'll be going back again next year to see where they're all going.
Interesting, you could buy watches there. Like, you don't buy watches at Dubai Watch Week. You don't buy watches at like Geneva Watch Days.
Exactly. So when you go to those big shows, you're just there to look, maybe to try on if you're lucky. But here, every brand was selling their goods. They had everything in stock. And by the end of the day, there were some people that had, shopping bags of watch boxes they were leaving with. I stuck with just one because this was my favorite that I saw. But Christopher Ward's a British watchmaker. Studio Underdog is a British watchmaker. There's Fears. But those are kind of the only ones that have name recognition so far. I think that there's going to be a lot more growth there because what they're making is really high quality, thoughtful, great design.
And it is great that you've shown the breadth of what's possible because we've got really high quality design. And I think you mentioned you met the people behind the brand.
Yes, these were two best friends. They started the brand about 3 years ago. This was actually named after one of their daughters. One of their daughters' name is Eden, and they called this color Eden Green. So there's a lot of really good personal connection there. They were both there working the stand, talking to customers. They emailed me afterwards to make sure that I liked the watch and was having a good time. So they're really, you get a personal connection with some of these smaller brands that you won't necessarily get from a bigger brand like IWC or like Casio,
Mr. Casio doesn't come around too often.
This watch is special to me because of the person I gave to it, but I don't have any particular love for Casio, the brand.
No, that makes sense. And it's interesting how you can have like a personal relationship with the person who makes a Beaucroft, but also with Moser. I mean, we know Bertram, Edouard, they're active on social media. They're everywhere physically in the world at the same time. Hey guys.
Hi guys.
But then again, we get back to those small brands, great relationships, and really cool aesthetics. Now you need to tell me about this white gold Tourbillon.
I love this watch. I love this watch so much. And this was our first Moser. It is one of those watches we really do share. A lot of couples that we know say they share their watches, and we certainly say we share watches, or we intend to, and that doesn't always pan out. But this we share. It is a red dial, fume, flying tourbillon with blued hands, white gold case, black alligator strap, and the red on the inside is amazing. And it's got a pin buckle clasp, so it's really easy to adjust.
Yeah, and also, I gotta say, like, another pretty large watch. Like, this is a good solid size. This is not a lady's watch. This is not petite or vanishing in any respect.
No, but one of the things I love about Moser is they don't actually brand men's and ladies models. They never have. I hope they never do, because when you wear a Moser, you're just wearing the Moser, whatever that design is. So there's no conversation about, is it too big or is it too small? They make a range of sizes. The Mega Cool's 42.8. That's, I think, 40. And those ranges are for everybody. I mean, I see women wearing Apple watches all the time now, and I'm pretty sure the smallest Apple watch you can get is 40 millimeters. So
yeah, it's a big thing.
Yeah.
It's a brick on the wrist.
So women are already wearing 40 millimeter Apple watches. If they're thinking about the kinds of mechanical watches they'd consider, I would be really surprised if they'd want to switch to something smaller now that that has become sort of the norm.
And I guess the super watch nerd question, like, do you ever find, because I dress to match my watch. It's not the watch matching my dress. Do you ever like pick out a watch in the morning and say, okay, I got to build a whole outfit around this?
Oh, definitely, yes. So if I'm going to wear this watch, it's because, you know, I'm going to some event where I want to make that statement. Bold, red dial, tourbillon, like this is a conversation piece of a watch.
That's a power watch, yeah.
Yeah, you have to be ready to talk about it. And so if I'm wearing this watch, I need to plan everything else to match. And that's part of the fun of it, right? And also you plan on not just your outfit, but you know, I plan on my shoes and jewelry and handbags, and I would love if a brand would make a watch handbag combination, just throwing that out there.
Louis Vuitton, please make that happen.
I know, or maybe, you know, Christian Louboutin could have like a little red on the inside, like the shoes. But there are lots of fun ways to incorporate watches into your daily life. And a lot of times if I'm going to a client meeting or a court, I'm an attorney, so I might have to go out and be dressed up to like some very conservative look. But you can always wear a watch that brings a little bit of color, a little bit of brightness, a little bit of a conversation piece to the party as well.
Definitely, and I have many times dressed around the watch and not the other way.
Yes.
So this is a relatively recent arrival. This might be the newest watch in the collection, or one of the newest, but I was there when you got this. So Moser Rose Gold Vantablack concept dial, no details, very stark, very dramatic. What drew you to it?
So I had been toying with the idea of Vantablack for a long time, and I just learned Vantablack is vertically aligned nanotube array black. So the nanotubes on this, they stand up vertically, and the light apparently reflects back and forth between them until it's completely absorbed. 99.9 something % of light does not escape. And when you look at this dial, you can't actually see the dial because there's no reflection. It's like you're looking into this abyss of nothingness, which was really appealing to me for some reason. But we went to the factory and we got to see how they apply it to the dials and how they make the indices. And when they make the indices, which I don't have because I wanted the purest form of this.
None blacker.
None blacker, right. Like the hands are sort of just floating on top of it. It's very beautiful. And I didn't want it to take away from that effect. But it's very cool technology. And when they do have indices on these watches, they have to do it as a base plate first, and then they cut into the top plate with the Vantablack on it so that the gold will show through, because they can't apply anything on top of the nanotubes. Otherwise, they sort of fall down like dominoes, I guess. So it's a really careful, thoughtful effect. And I had wanted it for a long time, but I wanted it without those indices so that it was really in the purest form.
That's really cool. And I was there for the delivery of this one. So again, we talk about those smaller brands and relationships. We got Edouard Mélon on the phone at God knows what hour, wherever he was,
yeah.
and we showed him the delivery of the watch.
And then we showed him the whole room, and we said, hi. But, you know, this is my favorite watch I've ever, I think I've worn this watch exclusively as a new watch more than I've ever worn another new watch, if that makes sense. Like when I got this one.
You've been more enthused about that delivery than any prior.
Yes, exactly. So I got this one and I wore it a lot, but then I sort of kept putting my other ones back in the rotation. I think I wore this for 2 weeks straight and I didn't change it. So I really love the watch, and the connection with Moser is really special to us because we were fans of the brand a couple of years ago before they really took off. And so the fact that they're doing so well and they have such a fun community and they have a great group of collectors and fans is really fun for us. It's a great part of it's a great little subset of the watch world because Moser people tend to be fun and they like to meet each other and do things together. You met Shane, he's a big Moser guy. Hi Shane, hi Ron, hi Rachel. Hello to all of our Moser friends. And there's always more and more Moser friends coming because these are watches that when you start to show them to people and people start putting them on, they can't stop putting them on. We really fall in love when you see them in person. When you really get a chance to stare into those dials and put them on, people get converted pretty regularly.
So, I mean, I got to say, having a white gold Moser 20-piece limited edition Tourbillon is pretty Grail watch to me. But I want to know, what's the Grail watch to you? Is there an apex of the collection, like a reach that you dream of?
I mean, there are a couple beautiful Pateks that I think about. Patek makes a 39.9 millimeter size for their Aquanauts, which I think would be really a great Grail piece for me. Down the line, you know, when I'm really ready for it. But before that, I think I'll probably be looking at the Freak because we've learned a lot about Ulysse Nardin in the last year or two. You've done a lot of coverage on Ulysse Nardin as well. And I really feel like a Freak is in my future. It's almost there. You know, they used to be too big. I couldn't wear them. It was one of those watches that just simply didn't fit. Now they've sized down. The Freak X is 43 millimeters, but it's wearable. And I feel like they're just on the cusp of a design that's really gonna do it with color and, you know, I feel like they're just on the cusp. So we've worn some of the new designs on the Freak X. They have rose gold, they have the camouflage ops coloring. That's not exactly for me, but I think with the stuff that's coming next will be.
Well, Kate, thank you so much. When that Grail watch finally lands, you need to come back.
Thank you so much, I will. This has been a lot of fun, I appreciate it, and you know, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, the solo album was a success, and every track was a hit.
Thanks, guys.